there's a big difference as well between a local domestic U.S. law enforcement officer involved shooting or ambush of her in their vehicle. There's a difference between that and a military operation overseas when you're ambushed in your vehicle, or you take a roadside IED, or maybe you're aggressing and you're on a capture, kill, sweep and clear, whatever you want to call it, mission, and you take fire from one direction. There's also something different when you're talking about a rapid action tactics, like responding to an active shooter, whether you're in or around your vehicle, or they are in or around their vehicle, and the shooting range. And the one of those that doesn't fit the others the most is the shooting range. Welcome to Uncensored Tactical, where our goal is to talk about training, tactics, and more without being limited by red tape or a sterile, bureaucratic environment, so that we can bring you value and insight in a way that other organizations just plain can't. All right, I'm excited about this one. I'm liking that I have reminded myself to stick to training, tactics, and truth, particularly staying heavy on the training and the tactics. So this one is episode 179 on ambushes, and particularly around vehicles. So really, really short. First up, big whoop whoop thank you to the Patreon supporters. This episode is actually directly from one conversation with one Patreon supporter who said, hey, I have a question about ambushes, particularly around vehicles. And I said, instead of me writing and texting you a 10 paragraph answer, why don't I just devote an entire hour to your question? So please consider supporting me via Patreon. That's just patreon.com/UTAC. Or if you want to support me but you're not a fan of Patreon, just email me, pat@utac.io. That's my new and should be my only email address that we're using. And let me know how else you would like to support me. I would be more than happy to work with you. And especially consider jumping on the Patreon support team if you want some tailored content, or if you want to say in what type of topics we cover in the future. During the show, if you realize you want to get a hold of me or drop me some comments or some feedback, again, my email is pat@utac.io. That's my email. Other housekeeping will be done at the end of the show. Let's jump right in. I am drinking some peanut butter flavored whiskey. I forget what brand, and I have some root beer soda poured into it as a little mixer, and it is not bad. So, man, I'm pumped. This is going to be a good one. So here's the overview. I reserve, just like every other episode, I reserve the right, like every other human on Earth, to be wrong. And even experts are wrong, and people who have lived through these situations can still be wrong. So it is your responsibility as your own individual sovereign person to weigh the decisions, to weigh this discussion against your own rational brain. So if I say something and your brain goes, yeah, that makes sense, cool. If I say something and your brain goes, that doesn't make sense, also cool. I'm not right about everything, and I'm not right about every situation. And particularly, I've said it a million times before, when we're discussing pretend scenarios and we're not in those scenarios, the mental experiment I have in my head might not match the mental experiment you have in your head. So that's where a lot of arguments and disagreements come from, is that our vocabulary, our language, our just audible talking sentences back and forth between each other cannot create an entire world experiment for you to live in. Hope that makes sense. So I can say, if you're driving down the street and you get ambushed, you might think something completely different than what I'm thinking and seeing in my own visualization. All right, that's one hell of a disclaimer. So I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just giving you some perspective for what you might want to consider. That's my disclaimer, and that's what this show is about today. So let's talk about ambushes, particularly in vehicles. So up first, segment 1 today, as I take a sip of my whiskey. Hold on. And I have Arrow here in the background, of course. You're being a good girl. And for those of you that might be relatively new to the show, Arrow is my 1-year-old female Dutch Shepherd dog. She's my service dog, and she's a working dog. We work every day together, and we live life together, and I'm really thankful for her. She's a Fortress K9 dog, if you want to look them up. We're going to talk about them at the end of the show. Segment 1. An ambush in a vehicle, in real life, is not the shooting range. That's our first segment here. And if we expand that out a little bit, there's a big difference as well between a local domestic U.S. law enforcement officer involved shooting or ambush of her in their vehicle. There's a difference between that and a military operation overseas when you're ambushed in your vehicle, or you take a roadside IED, or maybe you're aggressing and you're on a capture, kill, sweep and clear, whatever you want to call it, mission, and you take fire from one direction. There's also something different when you're talking about a rapid action tactics, like responding to an active shooter, whether you're in or around your vehicle, or they are in or around their vehicle, and the shooting range. And the one of those that doesn't fit the others the most is the shooting range. So when targets don't shoot back, when you're not really mobile, when you're following range rules and not really worrying about 360 security, or at least your rear security. So those are all things to consider. I'll take a little sip of my whiskey. Again, we're going to get moving here in just a second. Oof, all right. So what particularly are some of those differences? Well, for a law enforcement officer, locally, domestic in the U.S., I think I don't know the numbers. So on this show, a lot of times I will take an educated guess. I don't think that military-style foreign overseas terrorist setups for IEDs and, unit scale ambushes on a local American U.S. police officer. I think that type of ambush is pretty rare, but it is common enough that police officers in the U.S. will be sitting in their car doing nothing, just parked or at a streetlight, and someone will run up and try to shoot them. So sure, that would fit the definition of ambush. You're not ready for it. You're not really in combat. You're not expecting combat. And out of nowhere, someone starts shooting at you. Great. So that's very different from the range, because if you're at the range, you're probably not sitting in a car with your gun belt on and your armor on, or at least soft body armor, with a radio attached to your lapel or your vest, in car with a radio and sirens and your vehicle turned on and with your foot on the brake. So if you are tailoring your training to match that, right, you're a responder and you're in your vehicle, try to get as close as you can to that. So one of the ways that I do that at the range or with the people that I teach or consult with is I try to stress very often to think about something else. So we're at the range. We know that we're here to practice our shooting and hopefully our moving and our concealment and cover. We know that we're there to do that. And we know that when we start the drill, at some point very soon, we're going to have to pull the trigger at pointing at a target and pulling the trigger. We know that's coming. So I intentionally try to force people to put their mind at ease. So I get them in the car, I turn the radio on, and I know it's hard to do. I've been there. I know it's a difficult mental exercise, but take yourself out of the realm of expecting combat or expecting confrontation or expecting to shoot. So that's the first thing. At the range, we're always ready for the ambush because we're at the range. We know it's coming. It's training. In real life, you're not ready for the ambush. So another thing that's really unique that I am going to start getting into shooting courses here in at least by 2022, if not earlier this year. And we're local to Magnolia, Texas, which is just outside Houston, Texas. So anyone in the area, we're probably going to start with once a month range time with myself and Texas Joe from Insurgency Knitting Circle. And the cost will either be free or very low for our startup for the once a month training courses. So something I'm going to do there, certainly, for sure, is the gunfight when you're not ready. So what are some ways we do that? Well, we put you in a car, and we'll put the windows up or down. We'll turn the music on or off. We'll hopefully have the car running because it's fucking going to be hot for sure. We'll try and get you in things that you'll be wearing naturally. And we'll take a big fat fucking soda and put it in one hand, and a big fat cheeseburger and put it in the other hand, and we'll have you start eating, and then the gunfight starts. So hopefully I've triggered some sort of mental response for a lot of the listeners out there going, oh, you know what? Good point. So maybe my hand will be cold or wet or slippery, or maybe I will have food in my mouth, or maybe I will have fucking ketchup all over my hand. And I'll have to go, my first step would probably be, oh my God, is this really happening? So you're completely in the mindset of, in real life, you would be completely in the mindset of, I'm not really expecting an ambush. I'm eating my lunch. I'm in my car. Oh my God, what's going on? On the shooting range, I think you already know what's coming. You know that the ambush is coming. So you're starting, it's like me just talking to you, and then you turn and you see a tidal wave coming, and then you start sprinting, versus you're on the starting block, you got your hands on the ground on the track in front of you, there's the judges panel to your right, there's the guy with the starter pistol, they say ready, they say set, and then they fire the pistol, and then you start sprinting. Versus, oh man, what's that thing? Oh, now I have to sprint. Oh God, here we go. So you're starting from two different mental and physical places, whether it's the range or something like a domestic law enforcement ambush. How would once that starts, how are your actions going to be different? Well, if you're on the range, you're probably going to know exactly where the target is, or at least you'll know where it's not going to be. And you'll know maybe how many rounds you're going to fire. You'll know how many magazines you have on your hip or on your gear, right? You'll know, okay, I grab the door and then I do this. In your local law enforcement scenario, the first thing you might want to do is you might not want to immediately return fire first. You might want to take that 1.5 seconds to grab your mic and say, shots fucking fired, and drop it and turn your siren on and bail out of your car. Or you might want to start fucking driving your car, right? So you have options. At the shooting range, you probably can't throw your car in drive and mash it for, 100 yards, 200 yards, a half mile to leave the scene. Another difference is if you're just, civilian Joe Bob and you start taking rounds, I think there is a completely reasonable expectation that if you're in your car and your car is turned on and you're able to, you just start fucking driving like hell and you leave. In law enforcement, you sign up to walk into the gunfight. So you might want to drive 20, 30 feet, but your ass should be responding to that fucking fire. So again, we have two very different options for what's a reasonable response to this, a reasonable physical response once this happens. So when we're talking about ambushes, particularly around vehicles, you have to know that it's not just one option. It's not just one size fits all, generic, here's a very good tactic idea. It's a completely different fucking mindset depending on what you're doing, what your status is, what your job is, where you're at in the world, whether you have your family with you in the car or not. I have a good friend of mine that was involved in an active shooter. He was in the vehicle with his kids, and his wife was inside a building that he was parked outside of when the shooting started. So let's take a second and think how you would figure that out, right? Your partner, your girlfriend, boyfriend, husband, wife, whatever is, or any other family member that you're with in the car gets out, you've parked, they get out, they walk into a building, and you see a shooting happen between you and the building. Do you run up and get engaged in that fire? Do you call your partner who's inside the building or your family member? What do you tell your kids to do? If you drive, how far do you drive away and leave? If you stay, where do you stay? Where do you go? How do you position your vehicle? Do you reposition your vehicle? Do you get on the phone with the police first, or do you get on the phone with your loved one first? I think this conversation is so much more valuable, hopefully, to the audience members than me telling you, blah, 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 Instagram firearm training. First you grab the seatbelt, then you punch your weapon out, and then you open the door. I think there's so much more to worry about than that. But let me stay a little bit on topic here, a little bit, with the flow of today's outline. Let's talk about how a military person getting ambushed would be way different than a shooting range or a law enforcement ambush. For a military ambush, you're not always, definitely not always, but probably more highly armed than a local law enforcement officer or a local civilian. And you're probably more highly armed than your enemy that you're going up against if you're in the U.S. military, and we're in the current year that we're in. So a pretty reasonable option would be, you're also probably with a bunch of your buddies, or at least coworkers, whatever you want to call them. A reasonable option would probably be to rain down fire in every fucking direction. That's not something that civilians, A, have the capability to do, or B, morally, might not want to consider doing that. I also have some issues with military morality, but that's not what this episode is for. So just keep that in mind. So we can clearly see it's a very different option. And if you're in the military, there's also a chance there's other vehicles. There's also a chance that there's other people, a really good chance. So would you have someone on the radio calling in for a rapid response team to come support you? Probably. As a civilian? Probably not. Is there an equivalent as a civilian? Well, maybe you can call 911 if they show up and if they're not busy, but usually they clear calls for shots fired. Yeah, sure. If your phone works, if you have your phone, how long would that response be? Well, it depends. So clearly we can see there are some differences. So we have to understand where we are starting from when we have this discussion of, well, I would do this. Great. If you were who, where, doing what, right? So the starting point is important. So that's segment 1. A real life ambush, regardless of who you are, what you're doing, or where you are, is going to be different than what happens at the shooting range. The more I drink of that, the less bad it tastes. I love it. All right, let's move on. So segment 2, this is really, really, really important. I have talked about this on the show before. I grew up in a law enforcement family, and I was told over and over and over and over again, if you're in your squad car and you start taking fire, it's good because your vehicle is cover. So, try to use your cover. Well, a vehicle kind of, sort of is concealment, but in a way it's kind of not, because if you know someone's in a car and you start shooting that car and they stay in that car, well, you know exactly where they are. So it's not really concealment. And if you think it's cover, we have some fixing of that idea that we have to do. I've been to a number of very good, very effective, very knowledgeable courses from some really knowledgeable instructors. And we have shot the fuck out of some cars with every caliber, bullet style, all sorts of cool shit. And the results almost completely say that vehicles are concealment at best. And if you get coverage from a vehicle, if rounds are stopped from going through a vehicle, then that is the exception, not the rule. So vehicles are not cover. At best, there may be concealment. They're a fucking death trap. So, if you believe that what I'm telling you right now is true, which I believe it is, that vehicles are not cover, what would that do to change your strategy or your options? So segment 2 here, are vehicles cover? Question mark. Well, yes, but actually no. Far more no. If they're not good cover to stop rounds from going through or hitting you, what would you do? Well, number 1, get off the X, right? That's pretty common. Don't forget that you're sitting in a multi-hundred, maybe 1,000-pound vehicle that's insanely powerful. It can do things that humans cannot and animals cannot. You just touch the little gas pedal and off you go, right? And you're a huge hulking machine and you're moving. You can use that as a weapon. You can use it as a means of escape. You can use it as a means of movement to reposition. All sorts of options. So never forget, when you're in your vehicle and something violent is happening on or around your vehicle, you can use that vehicle in a number of ways to help you tactically. So try not to forget that. If you're in your vehicle and your vehicle's running, or at least working, you have options. Now, if you're armed, it's going to be really important to consider, number 1, it's hard to identify when you're in a vehicle. If you're taking shots, it's hard to identify exactly where those shots are coming from. You might see the person. So this is the pretend scenario that's really hard to nail down between 2 different people that are just talking. It's easier when you're standing next to each other, but there's still this problem of my pretend scenario and your pretend scenario don't match up, right? So you might see exactly who the person is, where they are, what direction they are. You might see them raise their gun at you. You might know it's a lone gunman, and you might see them pull the trigger, and you might know, cool, now I'm going to try and return fire, but first I'm going to bail out of my car in the other direction. That might make perfect sense. In another mental scenario, you might not see the shooter. You might not know where they are. You might not know how many of them there are. There's so many variables about your vehicle positioning. Are you currently driving? Are you driving slow? Are you driving fast? Are you on a highway? Is there only one other car on the highway with you? Are you in rush hour bumper-to-bumper traffic? all these things matter, and all these things can give you a greatly different scenario of reasonable options to choose from. So are vehicles cover? If they're not, and your vehicle's not moving or not movable, and if the shooter is mobile, and if they're continually placing shots onto your vehicle, and if all you do is sit in your vehicle and hope to return fire, and remember, your glass is going to shatter, you might get injured, you might take a round or a round that is fragmented. So trying to return fire from just sitting in your vehicle to a shooter that's mobile outside your vehicle is probably a losing battle. It's not going to be a lot of fun in most scenarios. So bailing out is probably a really good option that not a lot of people historically have talked about. At least in my life and my experience, I was always told, like I said earlier, I was always told that vehicle is great cover. Well, no, it's not. So if you're out of the vehicle, you're still possibly behind the vehicle as partial cover. Sure, maybe, yeah. But should you be mobile to somewhere else as well? Should you abandon your vehicle and move, if there's multiple vehicles or multiple buildings really close by, does it make sense to fucking run away from that vehicle, away from that fucking bullet trap? Probably a good option. And again, the purpose of range training is probably not ready, set, threat. Okay, run away, right? That's probably not something we practice at the range. But in real life, not only might that be a good option, it might be your fucking best option. Again, depending on 1,000 other fucking variables, which we can't cover all of them, but hopefully this is food for thought. So, I'm taking another little sip of whiskey. Segment 2, I think that wraps it up. Are vehicles cover? Well, the answer is no. At best, they are partial cover. So try to work that into your thought process. And if you have a gun and you're debating which other gun you should buy, you shouldn't. You should go get training. And since most Americans spend a huge portion of their fucking life inside vehicles and around vehicles, you should probably take a vehicle shooting class where you're shooting into vehicles, you're shooting out of vehicles, you're shooting through vehicles. It's fucking worth it. Even if the course isn't really great, at least you'll get some value of seeing rounds hit vehicles and go right through. That's a huge amount of value, is just seeing that in real life. Okay. Segment 3, breaking contact. So we kind of briefed it a little bit a few seconds ago. Breaking contact might be your best option. So generally, again, very generally, getting off the X, so leaving the area of the shootout, is probably going to be a good thing. If you go to an area where there's no shooting taking place, that's probably good, right? Less shooting going on in your area, breaking contact equals good. Again, morally, you might be there to protect someone in the area, or you might have to take on that threat yourself or with your teammates, so you might have to stay in the area. But again, if you're going to break contact, let's talk about how we might do that. So forgetting all the thousands of variables, let's just talk about 4 variables. So you're in your car, and let's say driving somewhere else is not an option. So your car is either turned off and in park, or you're in bumper-to-bumper traffic, or for whatever reason, when you start hearing those shots, as the driver of the vehicle, this vehicle that we are in right now is immobile. We now have 4 variables. We're taking fire from the front, from the back, from the left, or from the right. Some things to consider. If there's only one person in the car, the driver, and you're taking fire from the front, does it make sense to open your driver door, either shoot or don't shoot, and then move to the rear, away from the fire? I think that's completely reasonable. We're not going to spend a lot of time on that. If you're taking fire from the right side of your car, and you know that your car is immobile, does it make sense to open your driver's side door on the left, to bail out? Maybe you're going to return fire, maybe you're not, and then you're going to get off the X and break contact. Yeah, sounds reasonable. These next 2 get a little bit weird, right? Taking fire from the rear, does it make sense to open your driver door, get out, maybe return fire, maybe not, and then run towards the hood of your car? Well, that sucks, right? That probably sucks. Opening your driver door where the person to the rear of your car can see it, can see that door open, can see you get out. That sucks, right? Big time. And then probably worse, you know that there's shots coming from your left. You're the only person in the vehicle. You're on the left side of the car driving. You know the car is immobile, And now, if you're going to break contact, should you open your driver door on the left and get out facing that threat? Again, we're not really including all these, several thousand variables, but that's something you need to now consider. What would you do? And I think a lot of people like to think that they'll immediately return fire. A lot of people, hopefully they know that they can use their vehicle as a tool. But is it also possible that you should be climbing through your vehicle to another side to exit the other side? And this is all with just one person, just the driver, and with the vehicle immobile. So I don't have all these answers, but I do want to give you these things to think about. Now let's change this up just a little bit with another sip of whiskey. What if your car is semi-mobile, right? So you can drive a little bit, like a couple feet, but not a lot. Well, if you're taking fire from the rear, it might make sense to turn that front driver's wheel. There's only one driver's wheel in the car. It might make sense to turn your wheel hard to the right to drive a few feet, so it puts the tail of your vehicle to the left and the hood to the right, so that the people directly behind your vehicle that are shooting at you, so that now you have some concealment when you get out of the car, whether you're going to return fire or break contact or both. Something to consider. Now, if you have multiple people in the car, let's keep it simple, stupid. Let's just have 2 people in the car, and you take fire from the front, and your vehicle is pretty immobile. And let's say that both people are shooters, right? So it's you and your partner, and you're both armed, and you both know how to shoot and communicate. And you go, hey, we're taking fire from the front. Hey, we can't drive. Let's bail out to the rear. And you say it nice and cool and calm like that. Yeah, right? Of course. So driver and passenger both get out, and at least one or maybe both of them get into the V-notch of the vehicle door. Maybe one of them starts shooting through the windshield while they're in the car. Maybe one gets out into the V-notch and starts returning fire for just a second. And then you're probably going to start bounding to the rear. This is fine, right? I don't see any huge problems with this. But there is something really important to be aware of, which is maybe if that threat's not immediately in front of you, or maybe, let me get back on track. So if both parties are bailing from the front doors of the vehicle, front driver and front passenger, and one or both parties are moving to the rear, let's say both parties, you probably don't want to move to the rear and then get back on the other person's side of the vehicle while you watch your buddy and you try and return fire around them, right? So let me be more clear. As the driver, I wouldn't want to get out, fire a few shots, move to the rear, have the passenger get out, stay in the door notch, fire a few shots, and as the driver, I wouldn't want to come back around the rear, the trunk of the vehicle, and move to the right side of the car, because then I've put my teammate or my partner between me and the enemy. Does that make sense? Hopefully I've cleared that up. Okay, let's talk about 2 people with a threat to the right. If we're parked and we're pretty immobile, and the threat is on our right where we start taking fire from, as the driver, I think it's pretty easy, makes a lot of sense to get out of the car and to go towards the hood or the front or the engine of the car to return a few rounds. And then at that point, it would be up to the passenger. Do they want to get out of the car on their own side, which is the side that's taking fire, come to the rear of the vehicle, and then come around that vehicle to meet up with you, and then for you guys to break contact or return fire, whatever. That's pretty reasonable. Again, what you don't want, you probably know what's coming. You don't want the driver to get out, go to the hood of the car, and take up a shooting stance and start shooting the enemy across the vehicle on the right side of the car. And then to have your passenger get out and run forward into the line of fire of their teammate around the front bumper of the car where they take, blue on blue friendly fire. That's probably bad. A sneakier way that this could be a problem is the driver gets out and goes to the rear of the vehicle when fire is coming from the right. And the passenger gets out and goes to the rear of the vehicle. So the driver could be at the rear of the vehicle taking shots at the enemy that's on the right, and your passenger can run right into your line of fire taking your rounds. So if you are the first person out, or if you're on the far side of the action, or if you're the driver, You have a very important responsibility to not set your teammate up for failure, to not have them walk into your line of fire. Yes, of course, weapon safety rules are important. You should know your target. You should know what's beyond it. That's great when you're sitting in a classroom. It's way different when someone's trying to fucking kill you, and the only option you have is, I need to return fire right now. So that's when things like, there's a big difference between target shooting and an overwhelming amount of firepower superiority. Those are two different things. One of them, you have time to aim, to breathe, to get your trigger control, to place the perfect shot, to think about it, to reassess. When you're sending overwhelming firepower downrange at an enemy, you might not have that ability to go, okay, let's place these shots. Oh yeah, there's the enemy. Okay, let me put my sights on them. Okay, let me squeeze the trigger. Oh look, someone's coming into my sights. Let me relax. Let me put my weapon down. That doesn't always happen. But one of the ways, like I said, you can prevent that from happening is making a smart decision about where you prevent yourself before you run into that problem. This is better with training. It's better with communication. It's better with repetition. It's better when you're operating with people that know what they're doing and you're both on the same page or similar. But these are things you have to be very seriously aware of. Threat from the rear just sucks. You hope you have a lot of people and a lot of guns and hope your vehicle is mobile. I'm sure it's really going to suck to get out into that line of fire to decide whether you should shoot or you should just run, or both. It's going to suck. And driver's side is probably reverse of the passenger side. If you have two people, you at least have cover fire while you're making your decisions. So, some food for thought. Where is my... Give me 1 second, friends. Just checking some info here. So that is breaking contact. Let's talk a little bit about if our vehicle is completely mobile. Well, we have options there too. Is the person shooting at us, have we identified them? Yes or no? If we know where they are and who they are they in a vehicle or no? Do we have the ability to step on the gas and ram them and run them over or hit their car? Or do we have the ability, if we're mobile, is it best if we just leave the scene? Is it best if we leave the scene while shooting? I've heard the phrase that if you're the only person in the car and you're armed and you're taking fire, you either drive or you shoot. You don't do both. I believe that is a majority percentage of correct. You probably don't want to be shooting and driving. Is there an exception to that? I'm sure that there is. Is it common? Probably not. So you should consider that too. Maybe you take fire and you start shooting someone, and you probably don't want to leave one hand on that gun, try and reach across the steering wheel and get your car in reverse and then back it up and steer with just one hand. A lot going on. So maybe in your training, you start thinking about, and if your range will let you drive your car onto it, maybe you start practicing, okay, even if you don't know the scenario, you can make it up. So you can add your options in even before you plan what the scenario would be. Here's an example of that. This time, I'm going to park my car so that outside the driver door is the targets. It doesn't matter what pretend scenario we're in. All that matters is that I'm trying different variables of different things in different orders. Meaning, threat. Okay, push my pistol out the driver's side window. Bang, bang, bang. Okay, now I holster. Now I drive. Okay, let's do it again. Taking fire out the driver window. The targets are to the left. Oh shit. Throw the car in drive a few feet, throw the car in park, take my weapon out, point out the window, and then shoot the target. Bang, bang, bang. So now I've done two things. Now, when this happens in real life, you might go, oh, should I shoot first or drive first? And you can make that decision pretty quickly, hopefully. And you will have run that decision on the range, which is really nice. Other things to consider. This is the stuff that I glossed over earlier and kind of took a pot shot at, no pun intended. But let's come back with this being seen in a new light now, which is, do you first draw your weapon and fire? Or do you first take your seatbelt off and then draw your weapon and fire? Do you take your gun out and fire, keep your gun out, take your seatbelt off, then open the door, then get out, then reassess? Or do you open the door, hold the door open with your foot, draw your weapon and shoot? No. So all these little bitty steps here, These are really good things for you to run on the range. Again, either with the scenarios in mind or with your scenario not in mind. Either way, you should be working through these problems. And you can learn an awful lot awfully quickly, especially when you do things like involving long guns in the vehicle. They are much more difficult to maneuver around. And if you're in your kit, it's a whole nother ball game as well. So if you're in your upper body armor, in your gun belt, and you got all your mags on you, crawling through a car with that stuff on is a whole different story than just being slick and being in civilian clothes and having a regular gun belt and a gun, and that's it. Way easier to crawl through a vehicle. So what you're wearing matters. Let's go back a second. So on the issues of doors and seatbelts and when you draw and when you shoot, take all those different variables, and we're going to do an episode hopefully this week on a training method that I call, or was presented to me as, and I don't know if this is the right word or term, but it was called, this was 20 years ago, encapsulate methodical, meaning you take one variable and you run it, or you take one skill or one technique and you run it. You add one variable and you run it again. You take that variable away, add a different variable, and you run it again. Then you add two variables at the same time and you run it again. Then you switch the variables. So you see what's going on here. How I'm going to dedicate an hour and a half to that, I don't know. But I think once the outline is done, I'll have a better idea. But that's roughly the idea. So when you get to the range, try and do all those different variables and try and fuck up those orders and go, okay, first things first, seatbelt off and then shoot. Okay, next, let's try it again. Shoot. Okay, now take the seatbelt off. And do those both a few times and see how that works for you. And then if you're going to open your door and bail out, make sure that your seatbelt is off before you bail out of your car. I've seen fully grown, fully reasonably competent, intelligent adults throw their door open, take their gun out, start shooting through the windshield, try and get out of the car while their seatbelt is still on. That sucks. So run that a few times, and you might want to start deciding when you want to take your seatbelt off. And you might want to decide to make that an always rule. Like, if there's fire, the first fucking thing everyone in the car does is unbuckle. Taking fire, unbuckle. Now what? Cool. Moving on. So that'll give you a lot of options. You can still drive if you're unbuckled. You can still draw and shoot if you're unbuckled. You can still open your door if you're unbuckled. And you can still get out if you're unbuckled. Some of those things become very difficult when you do have your seatbelt on. So that's food for thought as well. I think one last segment here, and then we'll wrap it up. Last segment. I have the video footage somewhere, but it's really old. It's not very good. So I'll reshoot it. I'll do it all again. But food for thought, if you have something like your armor and a rifle in the trunk of your vehicle. I'm just going to give you this fucking golden nugget of information, and then we'll end the episode with some housekeeping. So here's the nugget of info. This is a short one, and I might have said this before on the podcast. I'm pretty sure I did. If you are responding to a known gunfight, right, an active shooter who's actively shooting, and you have that information, and you're in your vehicle, and you're on your way to that. If you just start fucking driving, and then if you get there, and you were probably going to drive as close as you can to the scene before you bail out. I don't know why you would do it any other way. But let's see how that plays out, right? You go, where's the gunfight? Oh, there it is. Oh, yep, I've confirmed that's the gunfight. Let me put my car in park. I'm here to respond to the gunfight. Oh shit, I'm taking fire. With my armor and my rifle in the trunk. That sucks. So, let's say you're on the highway, or you're driving, or you're near your car, you're about to walk to your car. Oh, hold on one second, I gotta hit pause. Whew, okay, I know I talked a lot about Arrow being my my early detection and alert migraine dog, but she also, my very last deployment in service, I started having, my limbs would go numb. Any of them or multiple of them, it, like really quickly, like just you fucking snap your fingers and you go, oh shit, can't feel anything. So that's tough. And Arrow is undergoing some new medical assistance training for me as my service dog. So she's multi-purpose, not just one. So I actually am going through the steps of getting her to do a bracing position for me So anytime now that I get the chance, whether I do lose a little bit of feeling in any one of my limbs, especially my legs, I call her over and she braces and we try and get me mobile as best we can. So we're going through those steps. So thanks for bearing with us. Man, what a weird feeling. It sucks. Let's get back on track to, if you show up at the gunfight in your vehicle and then you start taking fire and then you try to get your shit out of the trunk, it's going to fucking suck. So if you're going to respond and you know that you're responding to that, as soon as you practicably, whatever that word is, as soon as it makes sense, pull over, put your car in park, put your flashers on, get out, go to your trunk, throw your armor on really quick, grab your rifle really quick. You should know the condition of your rifle, but check it really quick if you need to. Keep your shit on safe, get back in the driver's compartment, put your rifle in the passenger seat next to you in a secure position, and then drive to the shootout. And another golden piece of information, hopefully, is try not to drive so close to the shootout that you start taking fire as soon as you arrive in your vehicle. Hopefully this last little segment, this last gem here, is pretty self-evident. Hopefully I don't have to explain why that makes sense. I hope, hopefully the proof is in the pudding of just hearing, oh yeah, duh. So hopefully that makes sense for you. All right, so I like to do my plugs in the beginning and the end. So if you had feedback for this, there's two good places to do feedback and comments for this, for any of the episodes that I do. I like to post just an episode title on Instagram as its own post for all my podcast episodes. That's a good place if you have specific episode comments you want to drop or feedback for the community. If you want it just for me, and especially if it's long format feedback, my email is a great place for that. So on Instagram, I am at Uncensored Tactical. I believe it's all one word. My email, I'll spell it out for you, pat@utac.io. That's my new email, pat@utac.io. So that's some good places for feedback. I enjoyed this episode a lot, and again, this came from specifically just one Patreon supporter. I was happy to answer his question in a long format and to bring that same value to the community. So here's some ways that you can support us that are fucking easy and free and that mean a lot to me. Share this info with some of your friends that might enjoy this. So any of your friends that live in this world and they're concerned about tactics and techniques and tactical principles, share this episode with them. That would mean a lot to me. We're really trying to grow the audience base now. Like and subscribe on whatever platform you're on, especially if you're listening on Apple. A rate and review would be really helpful. Hopefully it'll take you about 30 seconds and it would mean a lot to me and to the show. Other big news that's really free and easy is go check out our website, utac.io. That's the shortcut, or you can type in the whole thing, uncensoredtactical.com. It is under construction, so there's a few things on there that might not be perfectly in place, but it's getting better every day, and there's some really cool stuff going on there. So what could you find there? You can find our canine page we just launched, because I do canine training right now. You can find our new online store. Go to our homepage and just find a little photo or word that says store and click on that. It'll take you to a third-party website, but it's owned and operated by me. So we do have some things up right now, but we're adding more items. Hopefully by next week, we'll have a bunch more entry tools for sale, like lockpicks and such. So that would mean a lot to us as well. The Patreon is out. If you want to support us on Patreon, that would really mean a lot to us. Even at the $2 a month level, that would mean a lot to me. That's just patreon.com/UTAC. The book is out. You can find a link for where you can buy the book on the website. I'm going to be adding that to our online shopping cart. So if you want to buy it directly from me, you can probably get that within the week from our Uncensored Tactical web store. The book's been out for about a year. It's called Tactical Lockpicking. It's by me, Pat Watson. It is supposed to be written as a entertaining but useful field guide for how to get the most in real life out of your entry tools, specifically non-destructive entry like lockpicking and bypasses. Our courses tab has a list of all of our future courses and a lot of our past courses that we've taught. So if you're looking to attend a course in the future, you can see how some of them have gone in the past with some photos and videos and recaps of some of our previous courses. I think that's going to be a big piece of value for people. Some of the biggest upcoming news, which hasn't happened yet, we got two big deals here. Number one, my second book is almost out and published. I really don't think it's going to be more than 30 days, but I keep saying that over and over. So just waiting on a couple editors to take another few looks at my book. But I really suspect it's going to be out really soon. So that second book is going to be, it's tentatively titled Fuck Bureaucracy, 2 words, but it might change. I'm not sure. Other biggest news that we have is that I have a video master series course of tactical lockpicking. So it's going to be roughly 10-ish hours of lockpicking content. It will be like attending my in-person course, except you're just watching it on video and it's just me and you instead of a full class in person. So that's going to be really helpful, especially for people that have a hard time getting vacation time or people that have a hard time traveling, that want to make it to the in-person class but just can't. So now you can at least get a really good chunk of value out of that without having to travel. I do have a private online tactical college group that's set up. It's a very small scale class size. It's just me and 12 other students. It's a monthly membership with no contract, but we are currently full. So if you're interested in that, shoot me an email, pat@utac.io, and we might be getting a waiting list coming. We're going to cover at least 2 one-hour video sessions per month with that group. It's going to be, of course, it's going to have tactical lockpicking involved, but it's also going to be things like all sorts of preparedness and tactical classes from other experts in the field who I will be bringing in to teach hour-long blocks to us via video. And if you're not able to make the course, then everyone in the class still gets a video link to watch the interaction. So that's a big deal, and I'm really excited about that one, and it brings me a lot of happiness. I like having a cool group of dudes that are invested in the training. So check that out and shoot me an email if you're interested. It's a one-in, one-out method right now, so I'm trying to limit the course to 12 people. So as soon as one person drops the course, we will open up their 1 seat. We have high-quality dogs and high-quality dog training from fortresscanine.com. That's Fortress, the letter K, the number 9. If you want a Fortress Canine dog like Arrow that I have here with me, if you want the training or the dog, please let me know. Shoot me an email. We'll get on the phone. We'll talk to one another. We will find out if these type of dogs or if this type of training works for you, because we wouldn't want to give you something that doesn't work for you. And I will talk your ears off about it for as long as I can. And then if you're interested, I'll personally send you over to Joel, and we'll see if we can get you a dog as quick as we can. And of course, Uncensored Tactical Audience gets a discount from Fortress Canine for their protection dogs. So if you're interested, please don't be shy. Just send me an email. We'll get on the phone. It'll be a lot of fun. I have a huge passion for it. I will be involved with dogs until the day I die. It has been a life changer. Okay, so we got a lot of shit going on. We got a lot of shit going on lately. So stick around. Feel free to get in touch. It has been a pleasure talking to you guys. And until next time, ask some hard questions, use some smart tactics, and seek out liberty in everything you do. See you on the next one.